Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's Dave Neal here, stand-up comic, host of the Rush Hour podcast, and we have a very special live stream today here on Hump Day, the first month of January. That's right. It's January 2025. We are halfway through what has to be the worst month ever, right? It can only go up from here, but several highlights to the month will be my next guest and the great conversation we have, but also shout out to the power listener who gave me what quite possibly could be, I'm not sure if it's the ugliest shirt or possibly the nicest shirt here, but it looks like a full Kentucky Derby has broken out on my shirt. This is not, don't adjust your TV screens, folks. This is pure adult white male privilege. I've got big jockey energy right here, folks. Anyway, good to see you all. I'm going to bring my guest in like 1 or 2 minutes. I just wanted to sort of preface what we're going to be talking about today. There is so much interesting that can go on with finances, but knowing how to dissect those finances is something that's probably above my pay grade, that's for sure. And they always say, follow the money. As you guys know, we've been covering this Bachelor Clayton v. Laura Owens weird saga, which dates back years when you find these other victims. And there's a lot of money manipulation happening, a lot of flexible transactions, threats of extortion, threats of job opportunities. How could a job opportunity be a threat? It's a threat when it involves Laura Owens, I'll tell you that much. So dating all the way back to Mike Maricini, she offered him, what? I don't know. What was it? $500,000 a year, $400,000 a year. All he had to do was tolerate her, sit in the studio with her for 1 hour a week. This sounds like the worst, episode of Saw, the movie. It's like, what's the big scary thing I need to do? Sit with Laura Owens. No, please, anything but that. I'll take the bear traps on my knees. Either way, she's learned throughout the years to use money, privilege, power to control others. And by that, I mean threats of lawsuits, threats that my family will sink your family. She's been threatening people with lawsuits dating back to her San Francisco days. From San Francisco to Scottsdale to maybe a prison, who knows? We're going to discuss the financial loans and other transactions that have occurred with Laura and her family. It's extra interesting to discuss this now with her father receiving over $100,000. I should say her family, including her, receiving over $100,000 in, I guess, life expenses because he's old and has some illness. So people go, all right, is she broke? Is she rich? And how much of this information can we properly go through? How much of it's public? We have a lot of questions, but I was approached by another amazing member of our community. We've got neuroscientists and pathologists and lawyers, up and coming to retired. We've got financial gurus. We've got ADHD coaches. They're all here. We've got men who wear horse shirts. I mean, really, everybody has been a part of this community to try to provide as much transparency. And today we're going to bring in Tiff, aka Big Tiff Dog here, to discuss some of the finances. So why don't we do that right now? Let me introduce Tiff, everybody. How are you?
Hello.
Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. Now, before we get into this very nice slide presentation that we have, tell me what your, like, I don't say expertise is, but why did the financial side of this story kind of pique your interest?
So I've been in the financial services industry for 32 years now, since right out of high school. Never had a different job in my life. Just said this. And so I call myself a property nerd. I like property transactions and easements and all the boring stuff about real estate. I love it. So it really started to pique my interest when everybody kept saying, oh, she's a trust fund baby. And there's so much money. They have so much money. And I kept thinking, radio DJ can't make that much money. So it just like was an itch in my brain I had to figure out. And I started researching, and all of the information is available to online for free that I found.
And why is that, by the way? What's the purpose for having sale, property values and things like that, like a sort of open source?
Uh, for notice, basically. So everything that goes on a property record is notifying everybody else that it exists. So if you have an interest in a property, you can search the history of it and say, okay, well, I know that if I buy this house, it's got two mortgages on it, and I need to make sure that those are paid off when I buy the house, so that when I get it, it starts free and clear, right?
Yeah,
And I
you
only
want to
put
know
my
that
mortgage.
some loan was taken out to develop something that didn't have a permit, or you want to know,
Yep,
it's like your Carfax report for the house, right? You want to
that's
know.
exactly what it is. Excellent analogy. I love it.
Oh,
That's
thank you.
exactly what it
Yeah.
is. Yep.
And
Yeah.
you know what I like to do? I like to go on walks with my wife through our neighborhood and type in my neighbors' addresses to see what they've done to their house. And it's like I found out, like, when I find out a bachelor person moves and I get a load of their address, I'm like, oh, so Keelan's doing very nice over there. And you can see how much money people have made off of the crazy, flow of the inflated
Oh,
housing.
yeah,
And
for
so
sure.
Ron Owens and the Owens family has benefited from several things. And look, I'm not here to be like, oh, they've got all this privilege, but there are victims that have had to deal with deep pockets.
Yeah.
And one thing that the Owens family has benefited from is he was a radio DJ during the glory days. If he came up in radio right now, he'd be a peasant.
Yeah.
You'd have to do what we do, podcasting, and wear ugly horse shirts and hope that people send you a super chat, right? Like, that world is dead if your name's not Ryan Seacrest and a few
Mhm.
others.
Right.
And then also they had a home in San Francisco before the boom. So
Mhm.
I know you're going to walk me through all of this, but like, where do you want us? Like, what do you think? Um, what's the point of looking at all these finances? Is it to prove that she's used her family's wealth to sort of intimidate these men, and also can you tell from the types of loans they're now taking out that maybe the money's not as good as it used to be?
Yeah, both of those things are true. Yes. So we'll it'll be backwards a little bit, I think, but and we can actually change it, but it's
Well,
easier to do it the
you
way
tell me
we have
whatever
it
you
set.
want to do. If you want to jump into the timeline right now, we can.
Yeah, you know what? Why don't we start just by explaining a couple of base things so that as I spit out words, people will know at least somewhat what I'm talking about.
Sounds great.
Nobody cares about this stuff really, other than right now when it's happening in a situation that's kind of interesting,
Well,
right?
it's super interesting. It's educational, and it
Hmm.
goes to show, like, Laura got away with so many words that the common person wouldn't know about the legal system. Oh, it must be sealed because X, Y, and Z. You'll be sued. Like, all these things held so much weight. And I feel like with finances, and especially with, you don't know what a HELOC loan is if you're not looking for loans. You don't know how someone might be over leveraged and underwater, and these terms that just get thrown around. So yeah, I'd love for you to just walk. I'll play the dummy so people can feel, like we get a good education here.
Well, and to be honest, a lot of people don't come across these things very often, even, as homeowners. You don't come across all of these situations, transactionally very often. So it's not something people absorb. And I totally get that. That's why people like me are there, right? So I don't have, actually, I do have, hold on here. Let me just see if I can just kind of split this off and still see you. Oops, I lost you. Hold on, bear with me.
All right, I'm here. And I'll just read
Okay.
a comment while you set that up. Someone said, "I love your coverage, Dave, but calling Ron a DJ it has been a minor pet peeve. He was an AM radio talk show host. Think Rush Limbaugh, not Ryan Seacrest." Oh, I retract all previous statements. I don't mean to besmirch the world of Rush Limbaughs out there, but yeah, he was a personality on AM radio. Could you
AM
could you age yourself any more than saying you were an AM radio personality? Whoever thought we'd have a podcaster beefing with an AM radio personality? What a time to be alive, right?
Right, right, right. Yeah, no, I guess I've thought those two terms were interchangeable. I makes sense that they're not, but
I used to love
that's what I
AM radio back. I used to listen to my Red Sox games back in the day on
Mhm.
AM radio. And Art Bell, I think was his name. He covered UFOs late at night on AM radio. But hey, sorry, it's 2025. AM radio is gone. And
Get over it, Dave.
maybe possibly the Owens fortune is gone too. But we'll get into that.
Yeah, for sure. So, before I say anything, I do need to say I'm not a lawyer. I don't have any sort of legal education. I just know my industry very well. and I have personal opinions that I'm going to share that I think are backed up by data and documentation. Actually, I don't think they are. And that data and documentation is information I found online for free. Some of it is pay per use, pay to play, so to speak, in different jurisdictions. But San Francisco was easy to find information, and so is Maricopa County. God, they're beautiful the way they do their stuff in my eyes. So, first, like I said, first things first, I'm not a lawyer. Don't take any of this as advice.
Yep, appreciate it. I wish
Yep.
I made that sort of opening statement on every one of my last 300 videos. It's a blanket
Right.
statement. Don't listen to anything I say. Do you want me to pull up the timeline now?
Yeah, so let's do that.
All right, here it is, folks. This is a beautiful timeline we've got. And you just tell me when to move pages, and I'll move them for you.
Yep, so let's go ahead and go to the next one since I covered the I am not a lawyer. um, and we're just going to go over really quickly just an overlay of the terminology. Then we're going to talk about the Scottsdale house, then the San Francisco house, kind of tie in the patterns of what happened and why we came to these deductions. Then the Airbnb and the family businesses is what we'll wrap it up with.
Love it.
So, yeah, we can go ahead and go to the terminology. So, really quickly, because I will mention it, the Owens family that I have found do not have a trust agreement. And it's very interesting to me. That was one of my first red flags when I was looking into this situation, as far as their status of wealth, right? Wealthy people make moves in certain ways, and I not always, but almost always have a trust agreement that their house and their cars and even some of their bank accounts are controlled by,
And now,
right?
does this prevent them from, if they were sued for defamation or something, this protects those assets?
Yes, yes. So that's the main reason that you create a trust agreement, is to protect your assets, right? It's also, there are tax benefits. It's so that it's basically like setting up your estate before you die, right? So you're setting things up that say, at any given interval in time, I want A, B, and C to happen. And the trustee, who is the person who's assigned to carry out the orders of the trust, make sure A, B, and C happen, right? And sometimes the trustee is the same person as the person as who created it. So, but sometimes it's not. It's somebody who takes over after you passed away. So
So,
that's
so
real.
a lack of a trust could be an indicator that somebody's not as wealthy as you might have
It's
previously thought.
it's absolutely an indicator to me that they're not as wealthy. I would expect somebody, even, I don't know. I would expect it. I would expect it in their situation. So a deed of trust is a stupid, confusing word that I hate because it's really just a mortgage. Um, but in some states, they're called a deed of trust because a third party handles the paperwork. Basically, it's still a mortgage. That's what it means. It's not at all the same as a trust agreement. That's why I hate the phrase, but it's called a deed of trust in some states, and happens to be the case in both Arizona and California, where it's called a deed of trust versus a mortgage. So that's it. Very simple. Just think of it as a mortgage. A HELOC stands for home equity line of credit. So it's where you take out, you have your first mortgage on your house. Let's say your house is worth $300,000. You take out $150,000 to buy it, and you want to make some improvements on it. So rather than take out another mortgage and pay a really high payment for a long period of time, you take out a smaller mortgage for like $50,000 and make smaller payments for a shorter period of time. And you can kind of draw on it like a credit card, right? It has a line of credit attached to it.
Now,
Eventually,
okay, sorry, yeah.
nope, go ahead.
I was going to say that is considered not sketchy, but if you have cash and have money, you wouldn't be doing this.
Actually, no, you would think that's the case. Well, let's look at this two ways. The way the Owens are doing it, no, it shouldn't be done the way the Owens are doing it.
Gotcha.
But people do take out HELOCs for valid reasons, and they have good uses
Yeah,
some
like
of
I
the
had a
time.
family member who their house went up a ton in value and they ended up putting on a massive addition, which continued to put the home up in value. So I guess the HELOC loan, it's kind of really dependent on what you're going to use that money for, right?
Yes. Yeah, because it should only be used just like a credit card should only be used for the short term, right? It shouldn't be something that you have to keep taking out newer ones to pay off the old one before they expire kind of thing,
So
which
how
is what
long of
the
a
ones are.
what is the normal length of a loan for a HELOC loan?
Between 10 and 20 years. It depends on the bank that's giving it. So what they do is, not to get too deep in the weeds, but it's like I said, it's a line of credit, but the line of credit part is only active for so long, 5 to 10 years, right? And then they'll freeze it at that point, and then you have the next 5 to 10 years, however long it is, to pay it off, where you can't take more money out of it again. You just have to start making a payment because the
So
bank wants their money back.
So you're kind of just it's by no means a Ponzi scheme, but you're kind of kicking the can down the road there
100%.
if you're
100%.
not doing things that are adding value.
Right.
Like if I were
Exactly.
to take out a HELOC loan on my house to just invest in my podcast, but then the podcast goes under, that's probably I don't have much to show for it in that case.
Right. Right. Yeah, you should be adding value. You really should. I mean, if you have an emergency, there are reasons that people take them out. But again, the goal is to keep it short term and only use it for what you need. Don't take out more than, let's say they give you 50,000 and your improvements cost 40. Only take out 40. Don't take out 50 because you
Mm,
still have to pay it back and they're typically higher interest rates, right?
yeah.
So you don't want to do that. Um, so that's what a longer explanation of what a HELOC is. A deed of release is just releasing the mortgage. It's we just put it on here because you'll see it a couple of times, but it's basically when you refinance, which is I'm going to skip a word here, but when you refinance a mortgage on your property. So let's say you owe 150,000. Um, but you want to take out a new mortgage for 200,000. You take out your new mortgage for 200,000, the lender records that mortgage on your property, they pay off the $150,000 mortgage, and then they record a release so that again, we know how many liens are on the property at any given time, whether they're open or closed. We know that one, a deed of release, when that is not filed, that means that mortgage is paid off. We don't worry about it anymore.
Like closing your credit card.
Yep, exactly.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah. And then a warranty deed is just that. It is a transfer of title of property, real estate. Um, it I could get into the boring definition of warranty, but it basically saying that I've owned this house. I know everything about it. I know all the mortgages and liens and everything that are about it. I've told you about all of them, and I'm warranting to you that nothing else is owing on this property when I sell it to you for $300,000. That nobody's going to come back on you. It's basically a way for people to have a little bit of recourse when they uh, buy a house and the seller says, "Oh no, I'm good. I don't owe the IRS $50,000, right?" And then you find out they do.
Gotcha.
So that's all that is. So we'll see that a couple of times when we go over things, but that's all it is. It's just transferring title from a buyer to a seller typically. Or sometimes people do them when they're adding somebody to their house, which, like I said, we'll see. So the next slide, I kind of already went over trust, so I don't think we need to go over that one again.
Okay. Move to
Um,
so to the family home of
yeah,
Scottsdale.
yeah. Okay. So they buy the house for 850,000. Um, that's great. Considering they sold the San Francisco house for 3.5, right?
So they buy
So
this during the pandemic. They probably get a great interest rate at that time.
yeah, yeah. It wasn't a bad one, that's for sure, right? It wasn't what they are now. Um, they immediately took out a HELOC. So within 2 months, we're hurting, right? We're immediately needing to take out $100,000.
So what does
Now,
this show you when you just see that? You see they bought a home. I mean, couldn't they just what's to say that's not just to build the barn or the horse thing in the backyard?
it could be. So that's what I was just about to say. It could be because some of the photos I try to figure out the history of what's going on with the photos of the property too. And some of those are hard to tell. They could have done some improvement work, right? I'm pretty sure. Is that what the contractor was for?
He was
Was
to
that
build
house?
he was to build something, for the horses, like a
Yeah.
flooring and a fence. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know how much of all that they did, but I think they did do some things with that money, but it was pretty quick. Like,
Yeah, actually,
yeah,
he ended up having to pay them over $100,000 in garnished wages,
yeah,
after they claimed it was shoddy work, which it wasn't, but yeah.
no, exactly. But that's what you do, right? When you don't want to come up off any money that you don't really have. So,
Oh, so do you think that that was partially because they just couldn't afford him? So there was like a kind of a scam to get that. I mean, clearly they wanted the work done for free. They hired a new guy, new in town, new to the, doing a new job. So they like to go after. I say they. We don't know if it's Laura or who, but they like to go after people that don't know what they're doing. Clayton, first week on the job type of deal.
right. Yeah, I'll talk about that when we get into the Airbnb.
That's
Um, but yeah, I think that's absolutely it. That they were just trying to avoid paying. Um, but what we see within a year, well, a little bit longer than a year, sorry, year and a half, I guess, we see a new mortgage, 1.52 million. So it looks like they paid off the 850 and the $100,000 mortgage and took out a new one for 1.5 million.
Do they
That
pay
is,
off that first mortgage with the new mortgage money?
yeah,
Like, okay.
yeah. So 1.5 million sounds like a lot, but we're really paying off. We're right out the top. We're taking 950,000 right away. Um, and getting what, 600,000.
And this is different than refinancing because they're asking the bank for more money.
Yes, you're right. Technically, you're right about that. People still call it a refinance, but yes, it is a new mortgage for a much larger amount. Probably because as we started to see in 2022, right, values went up. So we have equity, which will be important again when we go over the San Francisco house. It's like immediately as soon as equity becomes available, we've got to have it. We've got to borrow it and get it. So then 6 months later, 7 months later, I'm not great at month math. Um, we see that Sarah and Christian are added to the house on the deed. I want to say something about this.
Please.
So
And of course, Sarah
they,
Sarah is Laura's older sister. Christian is Sarah's husband. We've never heard a peep from them,
yeah,
either privately or publicly. We have had their friends come out. Multiple friends have come out and said, "We're watching this, but we are not defending Laura." It just seems like
right.
no one wants to talk, and we've wondered what's keeping Sarah and Christian quiet here, and if
Mhm.
there's any financial reasons, which you let me know.
Well, so going back to that $1.5 million mortgage, that one was, I'm just going to double check one thing before I talk out of my both sides of my mouth really quickly. That one, if I remember correctly, was concerning because it was, hold on here.
People love the term month math.
Month math. Yeah,
Month math.
right.
That's a funny term. I've never heard it, but yeah, those that
Sorry.
month math. I mean, we have it tough, us Americans, with this
Well,
English system. We have the English system and month math. We put the month before the day. Your day.
yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty wonky out there.
So, um, so the 1.52 million, I forgot to mention this. That mortgage is concerning because it is a what we call non-conforming unconventional loan. It's technically a commercial loan if you read it. Um, although I think that was just how they were able to get money. So when they went out and got that mortgage, they didn't go to a bank, right? They didn't go to a traditional mortgage lender. They found an alternative lender to give them that mortgage. So it's interesting for that reason.
And would that be
Peop-
because, you know, you don't have the same proof of income you would if you had to go through the bank?
Yes. Um, and that's a concern, right? We used to, wait, I won't bore people, but back 15 plus years ago, we had a foreclosure boom, right? And before that, about 5 years, 10 years even before that, you could get a mortgage just by saying, hey, I make 10 grand a month. And they were called no doc loans, and mortgage lenders were giving them out like crazy. And then when the foreclosure boom happened, all the lenders kind of learned their lesson and like, maybe we shouldn't give those kinds of mortgages anymore, right? Maybe we should make sure people have the ability to pay back. So now you have these alternative lenders who charge more fees, charge more interest, have balloon terms, and they are not loans that you see wealthy people take out.
So it's a little predatory in the sense that it's like, you know, you take it because you have to take it.
Yep. Yep.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
So that's a red flag, and it's the first sign that there is trouble in Maricopa County, right? Um,
Because honestly, how do you sell a home for three? And I know we'll get into San Francisco, but
mhm.
shouldn't in most cases you have the cash to just not even get a mortgage on the new home at that
Yeah,
level?
it should have, but
It's not
again,
always just financially
the,
speaking, they made millions on the San Fran home. Plus, he was making $1 million a year during his heyday. This doesn't even factor in whatever money you would have in the stock market and retirement, plus the money coming in as an AFTRA performer, like your retirement funds. There should be like 5 different forms of revenue that could keep them afloat, and yet this is, and I guess probably all of those must have already been exhausted if this is where they're going.
yeah, and that's my thought process. Because again, every time equity becomes available, we're taking out a new mortgage. And we saw that a lot in that time leading up to the foreclosure boom. We saw that people were doing refinances. They wouldn't have a mortgage for open for 3 months before they were refinancing it and taking out another one.
Wow.
It's how people were paying off all their credit cards every few months. It was a disaster waiting to happen. We saw a lot of foreclosures come out of that disaster. Um, and I have worked extensively on the foreclosure side of things too. So you see patterns, right? And then we see, like I said, a few months later, we see Sarah and Christian are added to the house. Now, here's one thing I want to make sure I say. They
Please.
did sign the mortgages. Oh,
Oh,
can you hear me?
yep, I can hear you.
Okay. They did sign every mortgage after they became joint owners of the property. That does not mean that they are also responsible for the mortgage loan, right? The note. Because a note and a mortgage are two different things. I won't go into the weeds on it, but they're two different legal documents. Mortgage secures the note. The note is the bank's ability to collect on the mortgage.
Gotcha.
So if you're an owner of a property and somebody takes a mortgage out on it, there's 4 of you on title. All 4 people have to sign that mortgage acknowledging that it exists, right? Because property rights are very important to us in this country, and you shouldn't be able to take somebody's property without them knowing why or how.
Right.
So it is entirely possible that Sarah and Christian signed those mortgages just because they were added as owners on the property. And I have no idea why they were added as owners on the property. I could speculate, but I don't know for sure. But that could be the case. However, I don't believe it to be the case because we see it happen right before these new mortgages, almost simultaneous actually, with these new mortgages being taken out. The 1.2 million plus the 351,000, the HELOC. And my assumption is those 2 mortgages um, were taken out to pay off that 1.5 million because that 1.5 million probably had a very short term balloon term on it. Again, those mortgages, they're just incredibly expensive and they don't make a lot of sense. If you don't need one, don't
So
take one.
so it could be that they were very desperate to find whatever way to pay that off quickly. Could it
Yeah.
also be that does this benefit Sarah and Christian at all? Is it like, well, we're gonna help you build your credit by putting you onto the, like in any way, does this benefit them?
Mm, not really. Not really. Because so if they're on the note, that means they're are so you're joint and several, right? You're individually responsible and you're responsible as a group, meaning the mortgage company can come after any one of those four people to collect. Um, so it looks like you owe a lot more money than maybe you're making or have the ability to pay back, if that's the case.
So if you're
If I'm
Christian, you marry into
Mhm.
this family, you have a kid. This is like weeks before they had a child, I believe.
Yeah.
So you're not trying to piss off the in-laws at this point, right? Because they can kind of see, like, you're kind of you're attached to them through this contract.
Yeah. Yeah, you're attached legally and lots of reasons. So I mean, again, I don't know why they were added, only that they might have needed to pay off that 1.5 really fast, and this was the way to do it. That's the only thing I can think of.
Interesting. I guess
So
we'll
we
find
see,
out.
yeah. So we see
By
those
the
2
way,
mortgages.
anyone in Christian's family, if you want to slide into my DMs and just give us a nod if we're heading in the right direction, because you'd be surprised. You start going when we were in the right direction on Chase J. Jones, we had people from GoDaddy DMing us, off the record saying, "Bro, keep going, you're there." Like they couldn't give me the info, but they could tell us we were, a carrot on the end of the stick of the metaphorical horse here. So yeah, maybe
Yeah.
this will unearth this might be a little bit of sort of financial fracking, as it were, um,
Mhm.
to like maybe unearth some new information.
Yeah, yeah. So they it looks like they paid off that 1.5 million, right? And took out these two smaller loans together. Um, like I said, almost simultaneously. Then we took out another mortgage, 1.6 million. And another mortgage a month later for 199,000.
So
I think
I want to line this up with she's fishing for Clayton
yeah, it tracks.
mid May in 2023. What would you imagine? Does he have anything to do? Like, he doesn't have anything to do with this, but they clearly already have professionals taking care of their finances. If they're getting these mortgages out, or do you think they're doing this by themselves?
I think they're doing it by themselves.
Wow.
I mean, they might know some people, right? I think that honestly, that 1.5 million mortgage makes me think they knew some people that would help them temporarily by doing that. Um, because it's like a trust and it's a thing. But I don't think anybody's separately managing their money. If they are, they're not doing a great job of
Which
it.
is also ridiculous to not have a money manager when you were one of the biggest AM radio personalities of all time, who I
Right.
call DJ Ronnie. But you know, it's yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy that this is kind of, and people in the comment section have said, yeah, of course, it's because he gambled all his money away. Well, we don't know why, but this is just what the numbers show, that it's like not the act of somebody who's conservatively trying to, get their retirement in order. And at this point, he's retired. So it's like the big money maker, the cash cow, is done doing his thing. So
You do
this is
not see these moves. Yeah.
pretty
You
desperate
do not
stuff here.
You don't see these moves like this with wealthy people or people who are, trying to tone it down, so to speak. And I mean, these are 30-year mortgages, right? These aren't short-term mortgages either that they're taking out. Like the
Yeah.
1.6 is it's a 30-year mortgage.
No offense to
It's
Jan, but she doesn't have that much tread left on the tire herself. Like, this
right.
isn't what you're trying to do before you, like, move to Boca Raton and ride it into the sunset here.
Yeah, and also, it's just concerning because they I don't know. Somebody said it in a comment thread somewhere that usually, at this stage in life, you're setting yourself up for your real estate to be paid off, right?
For it to
So that you
yeah,
don't
for it to be a moneymaker, yeah.
Right. So you don't have income. And you see things like reverse mortgages and stuff people take out so they can have something to maybe, deduct on their taxes and whatnot, right? But it's just not this way. It's just not done this way. I mean, there are money managers at Merrill Lynch, financial advisors who will have their clients take out mortgages and invest that money so that they have two things. They have an investment building and they have a tax deduction on the mortgage
Yeah,
interest.
especially probably if
I
they're
mean,
getting a good rate, good mortgage rate, like if
yeah,
it's cheaper than whatever
mhm,
other investments could come in, sure.
yeah. So that's a strategy that absolutely happens. I do not see that being the strategy here because you don't go to a private lender who's going to charge you extra interest and fees.
I was gonna ask you about that. Is there a way to know what the interest was on these loans?
Not really, no.
Is that because
There's
it's
one.
private or just in general,
Yeah,
it's not?
it's that information is typically private. It's not recorded typically. Sometimes if you have an adjustable rate, they'll attach a rider to it, and that's more to say, okay, at its worst case scenario, this mortgage could be charging 18%, and it could cause the balance to go up instead of down as payments, are made. So again, it's about notice. Everybody has to know what's happening on a property, but and typically you don't see the interest rate disclosed in a mortgage, only in the note that's private.
You know what's so interesting is I'm from Newport, Rhode Island, and it's where one of the summer mansions were for the Vanderbilts. They also
Mhm,
had mansions all over the country. They were one of the billionaires with J.P. Morgan and all these a couple others, and it was crazy to think that they could lose their fortune within 50 or 60 years. Anderson Cooper is one of the last members of the Vanderbilt family.
mhm.
And they were broke. If it wasn't for the idea of their mansions to become museums, and the government actually in Newport has a preservation society that takes it over, they were going to bulldoze this family's $1 billion fortune. And I was like, dang, how can a family lose their fortune in 60, 70 years? And here we say like a quick 3 years, a real quick 3 years here, where
Yeah,
or 5 or 10.
challenge accepted.
Yeah, challenge accepted indeed. Oh, funny.
Yeah, yeah, and again, you can see that when the market allows for it, when you see the increase in values start to occur, and you see people who are increasingly drawing that equity, you eventually will see the foreclosure patterns happen.
Wendy had a great comment. She said, imagine the son in law. If he divorces, he is screwed. Does their being married do anything to his stake in that home ownership? So, say they did get divorced. We don't want that. I want everyone to share their love
Mhm.
till eternity. But he'd still like it doesn't change this contract.
No, it doesn't. So he'd still, if he signed that note, he's still on the hook for it.
Yikes.
Yeah, you should definitely be aware. Definitely be aware. A lot of people say, "Oh, just co-sign for me. It's fine." Definitely be aware of co-signing for people and what it means, because they can come after you if this mortgage for that's currently on there for 1.6 million, if it goes through foreclosure and they don't make 1.6 million at the sale, they can come after them for the balance. They can collect on the
Interesting.
note.
And there could be
Yeah.
plenty of reasons. A lot of people think we're actually in a big financial bubble right now, whether it be home prices. And it was a big concern when we bought our home because, we were like, geez, can we ride it out if this thing goes down $250,000? And, I personally think we're in a position to do that. But, it's when you're not, it's a big risk to take.
Yeah. And especially some people may know I have MS. I've had MS for almost 10 years now.
I'm sorry to hear
Um Thank you. It sucks. But from
that.
from almost day 1, you immediately start to plan for the future and what it means to have one income in the house and other things that you may need, right? You start to align your finances and move in a way that sets yourself up for that, right? Our house is paid off now. We are doing things to make sure that we are not going to end up in a bad situation when the time comes for me to stop working. And, we have a tiny little house, right? It has a little bit of land, but tiny little house here, but it's paid for and it has a good value to it. There are brand new houses down the road that are selling for 750,000. Man, I look at them every month thinking, let's just do it. But it's not smart.
Well, you're
It's not
responsible here, which is,
right.
I
And so he's had it for like what, 20 years he's had this, I don't know. It just
they
doesn't
were
make sense.
they were also known, and again, this isn't even like maybe it is anecdotal, but like we've got so many people telling us they'd go out to dinner all the time. They were so well known in the community. Like it's very hard when you have that lifestyle creep to bring it back in the other direction,
Mhm.
especially. Like, look, I work in comedy. You do radio all the time. Different people that work as personalities and DJs, and you get a lot of free perks when you're the person who has the microphone. I mean, look, he's interviewing like Barack Obama before he was president. Like, you get to make a lot of connections. But when you're no longer on the microphone, you get to see who your real friends are. When the
Mhm.
biggest audience you have is like a measly Facebook account that your daughter runs. So it's like, it's probably very humbling to try to have this prestigious lifestyle when for a fact Laura tried to use her mom's Peabody and her dad's Hall of Fame as like proof that she's worth a rat's ass. It's like I guess you would label that as entitlement. Like and entitlement can be very costly. Like, you don't have an ego. You didn't outpunt the coverage there on getting that home. You're like, let's just take care, and and all of that, which is like probably
Right.
very normal person that's not I don't know. Trying to have this facade that they're rich and the famous. Like that's not why.
Mhm.
And the only practical reason they moved to Scottsdale is I was told it's better for his Parkinson's to be on a one level ranch, which is like totally cool.
Yeah.
But everything else here looks like it's more we had to get out of a high cost of living area.
I absolutely believe that, and we'll see that when we go over the San Francisco house.
Lovely. All right, sorry,
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
keep slowing you down. So
No, no, you're fine. You're fine. These are discussions that we wanted to have, so it's perfectly fine. So yeah, so they took out the 1.6 million again to pay off the other two, right? The almost what 1.5. Yeah. So the two mortgages together. Now here's the little thing. If we look at the date here, August 22nd, 2024, 1.6 million is taken out. May 3rd, a HELOC is taken out for 199,000. I believe that HELOC was taken out based on the information that would have been available prior to the $1.6 million mortgage being taken out. Meaning, there's a gap period, we call it. When you take out a new mortgage, your old two mortgages are still showing up on record, and your new mortgage isn't quite set up yet, either in the property profile or in your credit profile, right? So it's kind of you're in this gap period where you can take out a whole mortgage. And unless you get caught, you don't get caught, right? Because I find it hard to believe that anybody lent them to another $200,000. I don't think that house has ever met that value in time. Maybe it has, but that's an interesting loan and an interesting time frame, and I just think it was probably taken out maybe under free false pretenses.
what can
So,
happen if they later find that out? I mean, they just
nothing.
nothing.
It's sad, but really nothing.
Yeah, because I thought about that, when I just bought a home a year ago, and they ask you like, "Hey, what other expenses do you have? Are you taking out?" I think they were
Mhm.
asking me like, "Are you in the process of taking anything else out?" Like, they need time to know that their math is mathing
Yep.
without you changing and fudging your numbers.
Yeah, and so it's much easier to do that on a HELOC because HELOCs are low priority in the priority chain of title, meaning that they're basically like, yeah, we have this note secured against the house, but if something happens, that first mortgage lender decides to take the house back, there's not a whole lot we can do, right? A second mortgage, it's kind of like it's like, it makes you feel better. But because you have a lien against the house, but it's again, if something happens to that first mortgage and it forecloses, the second mortgage lender is typically just out. They have to try to collect by other means. So, because of that, they don't do as much due diligence, right? They might pull a property report 2 weeks prior to closing and not check it again before they actually do the closing. Whereas when you take out a first mortgage, they pull a property report when you apply, and then they double check it at the time of closing to make sure that nothing new has popped up in that period. There is still a gap somewhere in that time, but at least they've tried to protect themselves, cover all bases as much as possible. On a HELOC, they'll probably pull everything once and call it a day, right? And process it. So
And also they
that's
go
just my thought.
from from a HELOC of 100K to then 351K. That's got to be sort of alarming to triple the amount you're taking out, or is that normal you would see with a
I
HELOC?
think they did that because they could probably only get 1.195 on the first mortgage, right? So, and they still needed 350,000 to pay off the rest of that 1.52 million.
Gotcha.
So they probably made some side deals and said, okay, here, if you take a short payoff, we'll get you that money back as fast as possible by taking out a HELOC. And the timing probably aligned up for them to have to do it after the fact. But
This is stressing me
thought.
out. This is just
Yeah.
like, this feels like that Adam Sandler movie where he's a diamond dealer and he's just constantly, there's, it's like one of those like stressful movies where you're constantly making decisions that put you further and further away from safety here.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly it. So, yeah, so they took that out. I don't expect to see a lot of activity from them going forward because prices aren't really jumping like they were, right? Values, I should say. And I don't believe they have a whole lot of wiggle room left to do anything significant against the house. I think they're underwater, in my opinion, as of right now, uh, based on value and what they
So
owe.
can you just kind of lay out underwater? So they owe more than the home is worth is what is essentially what that means. Like
Yes.
selling it would not net them a break even.
No. They would have to, arrange a short sale or make an agreement maybe with the second mortgage lender that, although I still don't think it would be enough, but with the second mortgage lender, the HELOC lender, they would have to make an agreement saying, "Hey, we can't pay you off at closing, but if you give us a release, we'll sign a personal loan and we'll pay you back as much as we can over time." Um, we did a lot of that, after the foreclosure boom when people were trying to, like, keep their houses, but we're still in those situations. So you would see, lenders taking less than what, because it's better to do that than go through the expense. It's expensive to foreclose. I know that sounds weird and oh wow, sorry for the banks, but it's true. They have to hire a lot of legal professionals and professionals like me as well to check off all the boxes that need to happen during a foreclosure.
Sure, they'd much
Down
rather
to
keep you active and keep you paying.
Yeah, yeah. They have to insure the house. There's so much, right? So they would rather take a short payoff than
Like when you
go through
sell
the
your debt,
process.
like when you sell your
Mhm.
debt to an agency, like they're just happy to get something. Um,
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah.
So that's
All right. So I'm sorry.
Nope, that's okay. I was just gonna say, so that's where we are on the Scottsdale house. Underwater means that I believe they owe more than the value of the home as
So
it stands
maybe
today.
she'll have to be buying a snorkel for the and by the way, look, I feel bad generally for anybody who's of any financial stress. I just can't feel bad when she's continuing to, you know, harass and bully these men who, whatever money they're losing here, I'm guaranteeing you Mike Maricini is going to lose more in the long term. This is a guy who is in a big industry that's been held back over a faulty restraining order. I'm talking like, there's big money, generational money. I'm sure he's going to lose over time. So that helps
Yeah.
me stop feeling bad for this family,
Oh,
and see like the toxicity of ego and the family. I don't know what the psychological term would be for like a family's narcissism or inflated self-worth of the family here, but clearly it's partly why this mess is where it's at.
yeah, and I do think it's a pattern that like I said, we'll see when we go over SF. It's a pattern for them. It's not new behavior. It's um it's something that's purposely been done over time. It appears that way at least, and It'll be interesting to see how they walk through the next few steps. It's I mean, I've been screaming since May of last year that it's gonna implode. It's gonna implode. Look at this. It's gonna
You mean
implode.
these numbers you've been
Yeah.
screaming this is going to implode.
Yeah.
Well, implode us to the next slide. Is that where we're going? Are you ready for
Yeah, I
this one?
think the next one, go ahead to it. I think it's just about yeah, it's just about Sarah and Christian being added to the house. I'll touch on one thing. They're added, and everybody's listed as husband and wife, and at the end, there's a little statement that says as joint tenants with right of survivorship. And what that means is, if any one of those four people passes away, the other three people automatically are the owners of the property,
So does
right?
this mean that that Sarah would get the property before Laura?
Yeah, yeah.
Interesting.
If both Ron and
Now, if they
Liz
say, obviously, God bless Laura, right? But she's a failure to launch. She lives at home. They clearly are aware of, she's goes to online school. They can't keep her out of, they got to keep her kind of close to the house. We get that. Um, does this show that they don't trust Laura by not
I
having
don't
her be a part of this?
I don't think so. I think this was setting it up so that they could, um this is why I said again, I believe that Sarah and Christian did co-sign on the note. I don't have proof of it, but I believe they did. And I think this was just setting it up so that they could. They put because a lot of lenders think that if you sign a mortgage and a note, you have to be on the title of the property. It's not necessarily true, but um it's a good move. So the lender probably required them to be added to the deed in order to close those two
All
mortgages.
right, so it's just more of like desperation, like we need you. And
Yep.
I wonder if at some point it's like if you're Sarah, maybe they sell around the fact that it's like, look, we're gonna lose it all, so we need this, and then like you're kind of on the hook. I mean, it would be a tough place to be put in by your parents. You love them, to think
Yeah,
that.
I mean, again, not a lawyer and not a financial advisor, but if I'm Sarah and Christian and something happens to Ron and Liz Jan, I uh I I walk away. I let it go through foreclosure and call it a day. You can recover from that pretty quickly. So it's probably better to just let it go.
I mean, would that affect his pension? Like he's already got a pension with AFTRA. As people have said, he was basically employed by Disney. So like it's,
Mhm,
it's a pretty rock solid, life that he had.
mhm.
Um, I mean, I don't have much sympathy because I have relatives that for one reason or another got fucked over with their pensions and they have to live in a home that's far below where they should be. This is
Mhm.
like they have all the entitlement in the world. They could Ron and Jan Elizabeth Naylor, whatever she wants to be called, they could probably very easily live off of his pension if it wasn't for all of this other kind of bullshittery they had going on.
Absolutely believe that. I think they could live off of, probably his Social Security even, to be honest. It's probably decent, considering what he made in the last Social Security does that thing where they look at your best years,
Yeah.
over time. So, I mean, I think they could live off of that, to be
Yeah, and
honest.
as a high-powered DJ, they could, yeah, I mean, it just goes to show it's like flying too
And
close.
yeah, and she'd get spousal benefits even. So yeah, I think it's entirely possible they could live off of whatever income they have access to.
All right,
I
so this was a copy of a piece of the a receipt
The
here.
legal.
All
Yeah,
right,
the transfer of the property. Yep,
should I
that's
move
all that
on?
is. Yes, please.
All right, lucky
Now we're
seven.
gonna
San Fran.
yeah,
Oh boy, the San Fran home.
yes. So, mhm. The San Francisco house is if it's a more clear pattern of their behavior than anything else, in my opinion. So we've got, the grant deed that this is the warranty deed. Basically, this is we bought the house for 1.395 million.
Which must be a
Um,
hell of a home. I know San Fran has been expensive for a long time, but 1.395 in the 90s is still a hell of a home.
yeah, the pictures are still up on Zillow. It is a gorgeous house. I'm pretty sure it was staged, but it's a gorgeous house. I was joking that if I grew up in that house, I might be a snob too. Um, I might have that kind of attitude because it's really nice. And it
That's
has a picture of the bridge and everything, a view and everything. It's gorgeous. So
Yeah,
anyway,
the best gift my mom gave me was growing up lower middle class. That's the best gift is knowing what getting your bike
oh, yes,
stolen from a shitty neighborhood. Um, but yeah, that's a
true
good
story.
home.
Yeah, so yeah, we took out a mortgage in '98. It was a balloon, very common. What they used to sell, and as a matter of fact, I'm pretty sure I looked at this one and it was countrywide home loans, which went up in a ball of flames. But they used to sell this product very frequently in the '90s, where it was like, oh, we're gonna loan you a lot more than 80% to buy your house, but we're gonna split it up in 2 loans so that it looks better, basically, and you
So,
don't have to pay PMI if you do it this way, et cetera,
oh,
et cetera.
interesting. Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So again, sorry, I'm just kind of dumb
Mm,
here. They buy the home for 1.4, but the mortgage is
mhm.
975. So that means they either put a large deposit down or that was money rolled over from a previous property.
Yeah, I don't know. I That's a good point. I hadn't even thought of a previous property if they had one.
Roll it back.
Um,
Come back
I
next
didn't look
week.
I didn't right? I didn't look that far.
I mean, he's been in I mean, they must have been,
So yeah, that they probably did. I just never even thought to look farther back.
yeah, we
Um,
haven't. And by the way, San Francisco, I mean, Sarah lived in a rent control building that Laura was pretending to be Sarah. We have multiple sources on that to live in rent control, which is like, look, I lived in a rent control building. Rent control is great, but also like, it's like when your parents are this wealthy and you're like faking who's on the lease to have a good deal. It's just like another shitty example of learning how to play the system.
how the world works,
And
right?
not only living in a rent control building, but calling the cops on everybody. I mean, we got handfuls of people that all have
Oh yeah.
stories that are shocking of Laura.
Mhm.
And that was probably where they realized they can't even put her in a building nearby. And that's probably why she lives in the casita. And
Right.
they're like, we got to keep this chick on the same Wi-Fi. We need to make sure, she can't do anything crazy. And then she's like, hold my Monster Energy drink. I'll show you what's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, no kidding. Yeah. So they started to take out these remember how I said people would take out a mortgage, they'd barely make a few payments and then they'd take out another one and refi. We see that pattern leading all the way up to the foreclosure boom. Probably I think it took a little longer to get to California, but this is around the same time frame because it started around '04, '05. But and then we see one, or two actually, credit line mortgages because why not? Our
And
value
and
probably went up quite a bit. They were on the bubble there.
someone in the chat, and we don't know, we can't like vet this, said that he stopped gambling in 2005. But at that
Mhm.
point, he could all of these mortgages that could have all been just to cover his debts,
Yeah,
correct?
yeah,
Which
easily.
which I like to think the most obvious thing is here. It's probably just covering his debts. He was making a lot of money, betting
Mhm.
big, losing big, and or bet, at the horse track, whatever. She'd go to the horse track with him. Yeah. So that, I mean, that makes perfect sense. Maybe hookers
Yeah,
and blow. We don't know if there was hookers and blow, Big Tiff, but maybe.
right?
No.
Right?
By the way, someone got mad at me saying, "Oh, he was gambling. He wasn't doing hookers and blow." And I said, "I'm sorry. I'm sorry that they come in the same. They come in the same, type of person. Those
Yeah.
that lose their money gambling may also do a little of the booger sugar. But I'm not judging. I'm just trying to, speak reality here. So okay, so yeah, this is a lot of paperwork happening here on this one page.
Yeah, yeah. So we've got these, like I said, in '05, right on the very edge of the bubble. I think in California, they probably was the last time they, before the market recovered, that they had value that they could borrow against. So that's why I believe you see a gap between '05 and 12. In 2012, it's simply, in my opinion, described as the financial crisis that happened in the early 2000s, where their value probably plummeted to a point where they couldn't borrow anything. They didn't have the equity to borrow
Right.
against.
So they're riding it out, and then
Hmm.
he's still on air making good money. And so if you weren't a gambler you weren't doing hookers or blow or had some sort of crazy horse, thing you were sinking all your money into, you could argue that they've made several $1,000,000 on this investment if you played it smart, right? You
Mhm.
bought it for 1.4, you sell it
Mhm.
for 3.5. Simple math, right?
Yeah, until you add up what's actually going on.
Right. So all of these things that kind of get in the way of a good deal. Which, by the way,
Yes.
it's like you're surfing this beautiful wave. You have this once in a lifetime. You buy a house in a high cost of living area. The area is San Francisco is one of the best, one of the most expensive places in the world. This is it. This is your retirement. You get out at the right time. You go live in hot Scottsdale, which is a relatively middle cost of living area compared to San Fran. So yeah, I mean, talk about a complete blowing it, as it were.
Yeah. Yeah, and so I believe that they at the time, so we have, like I said, just that we have 112, a million 112. We have another 525,000 in mortgages outstanding. We take out this new conventional mortgage, which is basically probably a refinance. Um I'm not exactly sure how the math added up for them on that. They might have at the time. 2012 actually would have been right on par with it. They probably made some of those deals that I was talking about with those second mortgages that said, "Look, we can't pay you off right now, but we'll sign separate agreements that we will keep making payments if you allow us to have a release of mortgage so we can kind of get this new mortgage and regroup and get our finances in order." We saw that a lot in that time frame. So that's my guess on what's happening here with the 2012 mortgage.
And by the way, someone just sent me the Zillow. I'm not going to share, but it looks like one of the homes right out of Full House, right? It's a beautiful
Yeah,
home. And
absolutely.
right now, the Zestimate is over $4 million. So
Yeah.
it's, maybe
Yeah,
I'll buy this. Should I buy this home and put a podcast studio in? Should we do that? Should we?
I love it.
I'd have to smudge a little sage all over the place. We don't want to, knock down a wall and find a couple, fake baby bumps or whatever. Who knows what's in that house? You know what? I'm going to pass on it. I'm going to pass on this house, folks. It was a bad idea. It was a good
Right.
thought about it.
It might have bad juju. I would maybe stay out.
Yeah, just angry men, knocking on my door like, does Laura still live here? No, she's gone. What do you want?
Right. Yeah.
By
So
the way, Karen in the comments says, "Can somebody post the San Francisco address?" Don't do that, and
mm-mm.
please block anybody from doing that. We're not sharing addresses. But that feels like a undercover cop right there. Don't do that. I can't stop anybody, but I'm telling the mods to block people from sharing any
Yeah.
addresses.
Yeah.
That's not the point of this live stream. We're not trying to harass people. I mean, anyone's address can be found. She found mine pretty quickly when she tried to sue me, and that's fine. Somebody found my address to give me this nice horse shirt, but either
Right.
way, that's not the point here. All right, so where are we on this San Fran house? Anything left to say about this, or does this?
Yeah, I mean, so we see real quick, I think, and again, this is the patterns, right? As soon as equity becomes available, what do we start doing? We start taking out new mortgages. And I think that it's it's sad because if you do the math, it's a little weird on the timeline. It's hard to say whether or not that $850,000 mortgage was really paid off before they sold. It was released, but right before, it kind of seems like it actually wasn't paid off. But regardless, if it was, we have a total of just mortgages in the amount of 2.5 million. It's 25 2,542,000 is just mortgages on this property right off the top, right? Um, so 3.5 million sounds impressive as a sales price until you start doing the math on what it costs to sell a home, like the taxes that are involved and the commissions, um, and stuff like that. So really, if they made $300,000 off of this house, I would be surprised.
You would call that bad? That's bad home ownership, right? That's not.
Yeah.
That's not what you
Yeah.
aspire to do. And look, I personally don't think, owning a home should be like your key to wealth because again, you just never know. But this was a tidal wave. I mean, this was probably one of the biggest home value increases, you know, I mean, I don't know the math on previous generations, but it's massive. And for
Yeah.
them to not come out any higher is pretty wild.
Yeah, and so like let's say we saw this and then we saw when they moved to Scottsdale that they didn't take out a mortgage, they just bought a house, right? Well, then it's like okay, they borrowed some money in advance to buy their new house and that kind of tracks and whatnot.
All right,
But
we like a good speculation here. Oh, I'm sorry to interrupt. I was
no, no, no.
we have a
I'm
short.
just saying that would I could get past that. I could say, okay, that's why. That makes sense. But we don't see that here.
Yeah, well,
We
look, you're
see
a generous person, and I think when you're looking at these things optimistically, you want to be like, all right, well, people fall on tough time, but we know too much to know like this is clearly a result of gambling or something other nefarious. Caroline says, don't all these loans and refis cost money? You have to pay fees. Yes. How much would you, Tiff, our expert, total guess, they paid in fees for all of this? Just give us a guess on what you think the fees for doing San Fran and Scottsdale. Bundle it all up for me.
all of them take all of them just the mortgages, just taking out the mortgages and the fees.
Yeah.
Well, so that's interesting because those non-conforming, those private lenders, man, do they gouge. I mean, they can charge 10% in origination fees, right? So if you're looking at an $850,000 mortgage, you're paying 85,000 in fees.
So it's safe to say well over 250,000 could have been spent on fees alone.
Yeah. Yeah, easily.
Wild.
I hadn't actually I try to run different math scenarios. I hadn't run that one. It's a good question. I did run like how much it might cost them to sell, between all the fees of that. And that's how, like I said, I came up with maybe 350,
And
but
I know it's
that's
complicated
generous.
because sometimes the fee is baked into other, they'll say like, oh, there's no fees attached. Well, there's always a fee, it's always going to cost you in one way or another.
Yeah, there's always a fee. They're just bundling it in to the cost of the loan. So it doesn't, yeah, there's always they make money. Um, and especially again on these non-conforming private lender type loans that you get from private entities, um, they they charge up the wazoo. I mean,
Yeah, I
I
mean,
don't
it's
have a better
just
phrase for it.
it's like anything in life. When you have money, like lots of money, you get the best rates, you get the best
Yep.
deals because you're very trusted. And when you don't have money, like, sadly, when I lived in LA and when I live now in Nashville and I travel to some of the sort of less, the lower income neighborhoods, you see the check cashing places, the pawn shops, like it's just never a good deal. It's like, I need money now. And if you need money now, you're desperate and it's not going to work for you. And they're desperate. It looks like there's a lot of desperation privately, while publicly they're Hall of Fame journalists. They're this and that. They're at the racetracks. And it's like, what a cautionary tale this seems.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's really telling, like I said, I believe in those pictures on Zillow. I believe that house was staged, 100% staged. I don't believe that was their decorating style at all. It was probably very rough, and they had to do some things to really fancy it up. I will say they listed it for a lot more than it was sold for initially, and it sat on the market for a while. So yeah, it was just yeah. I think they maybe they were I don't know. I'm sure
I,
everybody hopes their house is worth a lot more money. It was a big difference. It was
and if
like
Yeah, if
okay.
you're not selling, if you're like, we'll move to Scottsdale if we can get 4 or 5 for it. But there is like, I understand if you've lived in a world where the market can be hot, where you go, all right, well, let's just see. But
Mhm.
the fact that they sold it on what is that, July 24th, 2020. This
Yep.
is pretty much this is like pretty peak COVID. This is does that what can you discern from this kind of place in time? It was such a unique time.
So that's a very good point. That was when we just started to get into, oh my gosh, everybody's buying now, right? Like it became a a seller's market right in that moment. If they would have held on maybe even just a little bit longer, they might have gotten back up to that initial price they were looking for. So I don't think that would have been a good idea for them, because here's the other thing. They definitely saved some money, selling that house and moving to Arizona just in property taxes alone. They probably saved themselves $30,000 a year
Sure.
in property taxes alone. So that's a lot of money, right? Um,
Yeah.
so it was probably something they had to do right in that moment, and um, I think it was probably the best way things could have worked out for them, where they didn't actually owe when they sold, right? If it could have been way worse, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, like, so basically, with all of the debauchery, with all of the gambling, they still were riding an amazing investment.
Yeah, yeah. It's unbelievable to me, especially again, knowing that we didn't just like, okay, if you didn't quite make a lot off of it, but then you went and you had the liquidity to go and buy your house outright in Arizona and live out your days, right? Just paying the very low property taxes. Good deal. But then we just saw it get so much more worse um in Arizona with the borrowing. And that worked against them hard in that now they're maxed out. They're underwater.
They're so underwater, they should probably buy another house, right? That takes us to the next slide.
Yes.
Um,
Oh yeah. Yeah, yeah. Gosh, I almost forgot about the Airbnb. Oof. I have
and
so
by the
many
way,
issues.
not to judge people, but I hate. I'm not glad anyone's losing money on their Airbnbs, but I hate that Airbnb exists during such a tough time to buy your first home. I just
Yeah.
hate that. I don't blame people for playing the system, but I mean, I know
Mhm.
YouTubers that own 50, that have done well. They own 50 Airbnbs. I'm like, look, I'm sorry. This is super not in good faith. Like I'm just, my parents, I think, own one property. My brother lives at it and pays them rent as a landlord. So like they own a property or two, but they're not short term and in their low income housing. I I just there aren't many scenarios where I look at someone who's tries to make their living off of somebody else. But that's just
Yeah. Yeah. This house and Keybacker are my two major issues, right? With this entire family.
so they put
So
1% down
mhm.
of their own money.
um
1%.
I believe, to be honest, I think the contract is just horribly worded, and that is not uncommon in these transactions because you don't hire the best people to do the paperwork for you. When you're selling a house like this in this type of transaction. So they probably actually put down 15,000 as a
Okay,
deposit. I'm just That's my assumption because the math doesn't math
gotcha.
on here.
So they
But
put 2 so they put 2% down. Okay, all right.
right, exactly. Not a lot, right? Um
You're
and
expecting
then
it to be cash flow. If you're gonna put that little down on an investment,
yeah.
I mean, you get an investment so you can make money on it, not or lose money because you're doing so well, you're just like, fuck it, like give me this tax right. I mean, I know people that own dirt just so they can write it off, right? But this isn't the case with them.
No, no, it's definitely not. So here's what we know about this property, and then there's a whole list of things we don't know, right? We know that the contract that is recorded says that the purchase price is 795,000. We know that these two deposits and a down payment supposedly brought the sale price, the final financed price, down to 715,000. Um, she's got a balloon that they need to pay, within 5 years, and it's 5.5 interest. 5.5% interest. Now they also have to pay the taxes and the insurance and anything else that comes up, right? Maintenance wise during the life of the contract. But what we don't know is what are the real terms, right? I said initially, and I believe maybe I'm wrong about this, but I thought it had a hard 1-year balloon. I know the contract says 5, but my belief was that they probably really said within 12 months you'll do your best, and if you can't, we can talk about it, right? And we can
And
renegotiate the terms. And it may still say that in the background, right?
okay, so
Um,
hold on to this because I just want to get to this before
yeah.
I lose the comment thread here. Jennifer said, "Love you, Dave, but everyone makes money off someone else. You trade money for a good or service." I respectfully, Jennifer, I understand how it works. I think we need to change the I think we need to change like the sort of perspective spiritually about this with a country where there's a massive shortage of home ownership. I don't think everything should be pure like that's a comment based on pure capitalism, and I don't think homes should be something where private investment companies come in and buy them and it's unfettered, every man for himself. I think home ownership should be a right that we protect, and if you're going to buy an Airbnb, I think it should be only after I think first time homeowners should have a shot at any property before someone who has deeper pockets can go get it. That's just me. Call me a socialist. But I'm sick of people like myself, an old millennial, not being able to get their foot in the door when they've paid hundreds of thousands of dollars in rent their whole life. All right, cue the fireworks. That's me. Okay, so we're back on this balloon loan. So what happens? And I know you've already explained this, but just explain it like I'm 5. What happens here if they don't pay the loan? Do they lose the property? Like what happens?
Yeah, so this is there are a few intricacies with this contract that make it different than a traditional transaction. One is that the seller is financing it, right? Basically, it's if you think of it like in some areas they have a land contract where you don't get the deed yet, but you pay on it until you are able to finalize and purchase the rest of the deed, or a rent to own. They actually do those with property in addition to furniture, but and appliances. But
Yeah,
it's you don't
you get a
actually,
lazy boy with this house.
right. So you don't actually own it, right, until it's completely paid off. So that's a combined intricacy there, is it's not a traditional sale, right? She doesn't have an ownership interest in this property. I say she. Liz Max does not have an ownership interest in this property. They have a leasehold interest, right? Um, and it's minimized by the seller's interest, which is priority, and the seller has a mortgage on this property. And the seller has an assignment of rents and fixtures on this property. And what that means is that the seller's mortgage company has the ability to seize all of the rental income on this property, all of the fixtures, all of the furniture, anything that this property uses to make money. The seller's mortgage company has a right to those things. They have a priority right, meaning they have right over anybody else, right? If they need to collect on their loan, their mortgage, that's what they're going to go after, not just the property.
And what's the time period of this? Like, what could possibly play out here?
So, as long as everything's going great and the house is being rented out, right? Through we say Airbnb now. I don't think it's actually listed there anymore, but however it's being rented out, if it's being rented out and income is coming in and everybody's getting their payment, their monthly payment, whatever it is, probably nothing, right? Nothing bad could. I mean, the lender could say, "Hey, wait a minute, we realize you sold part of your interest in this house and we want it back now because you did that." They could. They probably won't, as long as they're getting paid. If they
Yeah,
stop getting paid, it goes to hell.
cat lady here. Thank you for the $5. Says she stopped posting about the Airbnb on Facebook in the spring and deleted all of her rental postings online. I wonder if she gave up. So they can just
Yeah.
like let's assume she did give up. What do they lose out on here? The deposits, the 15 grand?
Everything. They don't gain any equity. They don't get paid back for anything they put into it. They lose everything. They have to walk away. Boom, done. Every single penny that was put into it is lost. I will say
Including what
that,
was including the down payment that was financed?
yeah, all of it.
Wow.
Yeah. So
Does it hurt
they
their credit, or is it because it's an LLC?
no. Yeah, it won't for two reasons. One, LLC. Two, it's possible that the seller, because the seller, I saw they hired a servicing company to handle the payments and everything. It might be being reported to the credit bureau. I'm not 100% sure if it is. It doesn't typically happen that way, but since the servicing company is managing, I guess it could be. But so it depends. I don't have a good answer for that. But if she did walk away, it there is no recorded evidence of that yet. Meaning that contract is still out there showing that Liz Max has an interest in this property, albeit behind everybody else, it's still there, right? Legally and technically, that interest has to be released. So we don't have proof because there's no release recorded. However, that happens a lot. So I can't say again either way. It happens a lot of times, these releases. You don't find out until the seller goes to sell the property again that, oh, we have this other interest we never released. We got to take care of the paperwork on that, right? So I don't know the status of this property. I just know that if she is still renting it, or if she did walk away from it, she lost everything she put into it.
Bummer. All right, we got about just under 10 minutes left.
Yeah.
So are we done with the Airbnb here?
Yes.
All right, let me move you along. Slide 9.
Yeah. So that's basically, like I said, our joint opinion from the group that worked on this is that, they've been making poor financial decisions for a very long time. And it's going to burst.
I mean,
It's going to.
I mean, imagine, and the economy's been relatively good for those that have owned homes and have whatever other money that, it's not good for people in a lot of other reasons, but this is like, I mean, I hate to say it, but I kind of feel like an idiot could have become a millionaire if they had that San Francisco property and just wrote it out, right? So
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah,
I mean, my house is a perfect example. We're in an affluent area, so my structure house actually might not be, the huge jackpot, but the property that we have definitely is. I mean, our house is worth something too, but where we're at is kind of relative to the value of our property.
sure.
So we kind of we bought our house like right in the middle of the foreclosure boom, so we got a good price on it, and we just got lucky, right? Timing helped us. But and they were kind of in that same position. They got a good deal on that house in 98, It's sad that it didn't carry out, but you see that a lot. Like I said, you just keep taking out 30-year mortgages over and over and over again. So yeah, these are our LLCs. Quartet Farms is the one that does the horse stuff. With horse people, that sounded bad, but with people who do horse stuff, like my cousin has a horse farm. A lot of times they don't physically house their horses. They have to, they have them at a farm, and then the farm lets people train on them and stuff like that. I don't want to get too
Like
much
a
into it 'cause,
boarding, they probably pay a
yeah,
boarding
there are
fee.
people that are more well versed in it, but basically you have an LLC for that purpose to make the money, to bring the money in and out for those things, selling horses, buying horses, etc.
And sure,
Um,
you definitely would not want a horse to live long term at their Arizona property. I mean, there's barely room for the horse to stretch out a few. I mean, and not to mention the heat in the summertime. Oh my gosh,
yeah,
you're
no,
120 degrees.
that looks like a miserable place for a horse to have to
And in their
live, honestly.
defense, I think they're basically like buying horses that are about to be slaughtered, and trying to flip them. So I don't think the horses are staying there for too long, but jump
Yeah.
over the fence if you're a horse. You just go, you can do it.
There's better neighboring properties easily.
We have beautiful horses. I got a horse about 200 yards, 300 yards away, a few properties over. There's a farm and there's these beautiful 8 horses. And honestly, the cows that live, there's a farm that's right near us, and sometimes the gate goes loose and you'll find a cow on the street. And I've got to tell you, if you're a cow, this is the place you want to live. It's beautiful grazing, and it's such a, but yeah, Scottsdale, that's a tough summer there.
Yeah, we have a lot of horses in our area too. It's somewhat rural. And
all right, Sarah, thank you so much for the super chat. Just brought up a point. Says people are asking, what are Sarah and her husband on the hook for regarding being added to the property? Yeah, they're basically just on the hook for if no one pays the bills, they're kind of left. They can be, they can be what would happen?
Yeah, they could if they signed the note, if they signed the actual note, the borrowing part, they could be on the hook for repayment, but that's only if. Just being on the house as joint owners, not much. It's just having your name on the deed. There's not, I mean, unless somebody like literally gets very hurt, right, and sues, but that stuff, insurance takes care of that. It's not a whole lot of liability to owning a house as much as there is to borrowing against it.
So Keybacker is in Delaware. Delaware is like the home of the corporation, right? Isn't that like that's where you put your corporation? We see a lot
of real estate investors out of Delaware. It's because it has a few more protections for the LLC members. Keybacker, in my opinion, is one of the most illegal operations I've ever seen.
Wow.
If it is operating.
Why is that your opinion?
Because, I mean, not even from a mortgage standpoint and all the legalities that go into loaning money for mortgages and disclosures and borrowers' rights, etc. You have the actual sale of investments that is highly regulated, right? You cannot sell investments, which is what they're trying to do. Saying, hey, we're going to take your money, we're going to let people borrow from it, and we're going to give you a pretty good guarantee that it's not going to get lost. You're not going to lose anything. You're just going to make money, right? We don't have any disclosures or financial statements or anything backing that up. We don't have any licensing to shows that we're allowed to do any of that. And it's highly predatory. Highly predatory.
Wow.
There are at least 4 governmental organizations that regulate that type of there's a reason why there isn't a lot. There's a reason why the market doesn't exist, because that's a statement on the website. It's a market that never it doesn't exist. Well, that's because it's illegal.
Like Laura's children, they don't exist. I wanted to share before I want to give people the chance to check out your final slide here. This is a QR code everyone can scan. Well, everyone who's in the chat, do me a favor, get out your phones and scan this QR code just to make sure it works, but explain what we're looking at here.
So one of our group members put together this video, and it just is basically almost like a TLDR, basically. Like, it just goes over the case, it goes over the hearings, and it the trial as well. So it kind of just is like a snapshot of everything all together, right?
Great.
With some explanation in between and stuff. A lot of work went into it by this person, and I think that if you haven't subscribed and watched, that's an excellent clip there. I definitely think it's worth checking out.
Let me see if I can put the link in the chat, but otherwise, yeah, you can click on it right there or just kind of search for it. And I don't know, sometimes these links don't go through. So if it's not hyperlinked, just go to that QR code. Let me go back to it. And by the way, we don't have time. Oh, that's Ron Owens. Sorry. Wanted to give an update here on after showing all that money. Well, hopefully, when in doubt, when all of your HELOC loans and all of the other things have failed, just do a GoFundMe and get bailed out. But like I said, someone said, well, he's got a huge fan base. He raised $100,000. It's like, well, that's a one-time parachute. You don't get to do GoFundMe's over and over. Like this audience, came to help him. And it was with the generosity of all of the local media that took care of him and, did a bad job at sharing his story. But yeah, where did I kind of lost? Let me go back to, let's go back to the PDF here so people can scan this QR code. And you also sent me another PDF we don't have time to get to about that credit union. Did you want to come back on a future date and talk about that?
Yes, and the reason I do, if you don't mind, is because that statement, I have very strong backed opinions on why that statement proves that she never had that money actually.
Wow. All right. What a teaser for us.
It's just, I mean, if you look at, the Airbnb alone, it doesn't add up.
All right, here's a financial question for you. Cat Lady says, and thank you for the $5. Should I do GoFundMe's when I overspend my budget and buy too many matching outfits for me and my dogs? That's a good question for you there.
Sure, why not?
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, why not? Knock it out. We're all here to help each other.
Everybody's doing it.
Pick each other up by our bootstraps here. So
but you see this a lot in, in financial deception schemes where, the money isn't available in one way, right? We've bled dry the equity and everything else. And I'm sure some personal loans have been made that we don't even know about, right? So then we go to the GoFundMe stage. And again, once that runs out, however long that takes, it's going to implode. It has to. You cannot maintain this over time.
Unless they decide to start trying to win lawsuits, but lawsuits cost money if you want to win money. And I mean, because, we got to go, but, this, trying to get $1.4 million threat to Clayton, which I don't believe she ever thought she was going to get that money. I think she was just trying to get him to drop his thing. But you just go to see that whatever money they thought they had, it's like she's selling her, skinny jeans. She's selling her Barry's boot camp used yoga pants to try to get a buck or two. And I generally feel bad for people. I've been poor most of my adult life. I feel bad, but this is a bed that she's laying in because of wicked decisions to, as we've seen with these other men. So, I lose.
I mean, it's one thing if you're just honest about it. Like I say it, we live in a tiny house. It needs work, but I mean, that's fine. I'm okay with it. I don't have to pretend to be anything else.
Well, we appreciate you taking the time here. I wish, what can I promote of yours? Because you've given us a lot here.
I have a channel with 0 videos and 2 followers for some reason.
Could you do me a favor? You talk about having MS. I know my audience they're just charitable people. Next time you come on, if you feel comfortable, put together like an Amazon wish list or put together just a PayPal, something where people can throw you some breadstick money, okay? Because you deserve a nice dinner and you deserve you deserve to be compensated. So give us something that people can show you some love.
I'll chew on that. I'll think about that. I appreciate that. Yeah. I'm a nerd for this stuff too. So
yeah, but still, Chinese dinner, whatever it is that that people can chip in for, let us know. And
bear extra strength.
Yeah, there you go. Well, whatever it is, what a party! Get some Diet Cokes and some bear.
All right, thank you, my friend.
Well, I'm going to let you go, but thanks again. And maybe next week, or we'll talk about when we can have you back.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, take care.
Bye, guys.
All right. That was Tiff. Wasn't that fantastic? I'm going to wrap this up. I got to go live on Patreon, where I'll continue to talk to you guys as we make today's afternoon rush hour very busy. But wasn't that fantastic? I'm continuously humbled by people's generosity to share their knowledge, to share their things they're passionate about, and how they sort of interact with this strange and weird case. What decisions you make in life that take you down the path to have nice people, give you all of the financial background with the beautiful timelines and things like that. We appreciate it. It is fascinating. Thank you guys so much in the comment section for sticking around. If you haven't already, please make sure to check out the Rush Hour podcast, which is now on YouTube as well. I mean, it's everywhere, folks. So I'm going to share with you guys right now, like what we got going on with the podcast. Let me see where it is. I've got the playlist galore. So let me show you the playlist, but I've got new episodes every morning and afternoon. The morning episode talks about the Justin Baldoni lawsuit that is going on. He's got a pretty interesting lawsuit, and he's actually maybe coming for Disney and Marvel. So I've got that right here. And these are available. If you go to my website, which is what you're on right now, and I know a lot of people go, Dave, we just care about this case. Okay, good. Well, I appreciate you for sticking around just for this. But if you're into other things we have going on, it's my duty this year to really make sure everybody knows exactly where they can find the Rush Hour podcast. So I've got a full playlist. Here it is. Every morning, every afternoon, all of the stories. I got Jon Stewart slamming politicians. I got deleted gossip Bachelor videos. I've got Laura Owens updates. And by the way, trust me, it's been such a toll to try to create specific videos on every little thing that happens that I'm giving most of my content now to the podcast, which again is available on YouTube and audio. So you can get that, and you just got it. You can hit the add button here. I think that's how you do it, right? And that'll subscribe you to the channel, add playlist or whatever it is. You'll see it there. So you can get all those episodes twice a day, every day. All right, that's going to be it from me. Thank you guys again so much for sticking around. I appreciate all the kind words. And again, the next episode will be up in a couple hours. Otherwise, join the Patreon for a private chat. That's happening right now. Bye, everyone.